Hey everyone, it's Dominic from Kitchen Collective Coaching here, and in today's video we're going to be covering the 10-minute business plan. But for those of you who are watching, especially on Facebook, give this video a like and a share. Drop in the comment section if you got any questions. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as we go through this video as well. And I know what you might be thinking, Dom, a 10-minute business plan. I thought business plans are supposed to be big booklets worth of information, very detailed plans about your business. And I've got a very particular opinion about business plans. And that is that most of them aren't worth the paper they're printed on. And let me explain that for a second. We are talking about business plans today. So what do you mean that they're not worth the paper they're printed on? And it's for this particular reason, is that most business plans are done from a purely theoretical position, that there's no real understanding of the business. It's a plan for plan's sake. And I've done hundreds or probably thousands of business plans over the last 29 years that I've been working in this industry. And most of them were just done to make the numbers look pretty, to come up with a plan that looks good, but wasn't necessarily what was realistic for that particular business. And now some of you won't have ever done a business plan before, and some of you have done one probably. If you've ever gone to the bank to borrow some money, they've asked you for a detailed business plan to, particularly for the business, to then show how you're actually going to go and make that business work. And therein lies the problem, is that often that's done from a perspective of, I need to get some money, or I need to make the business look in a certain way, so therefore I might clutch that particular outcome. And the problem with that process, or the problem with that perspective, is it's not always based on what the business is actually doing or is capable of doing, or some underlying business fundamentals. And we're going to get into that in this video today. And so the reason I talk about this as a 10-minute business plan is because if you've got a business plan that's 500 pages, there is very little chance that you're actually going to execute on all of that. Probably 499 of those are actually not worth a whole lot when we think about what actually goes to making a business or making a business work. I've done business plans for small businesses. I've done business plans for multi-billion-dollar businesses, and they all actually have the same challenge, which is just having a lot of useless information and graphs and plans and analysis and things like that, and financial plans and 5-year projections and things, but they're not necessarily based in what the business is doing, and more importantly, how it's going to get from point A to point B in a realistic time frame. So the reason that we actually came up with a 10-minute business plan is because it just goes straight to the core of what makes businesses work, particularly in this industry. I'm going to see that with the numbers and the percentages that we've got here, and then focus on the action plan. What are the things you actually do or going to do to achieve your goals for that particular business? And therein lies the focus. A business plan should all be about understanding where you're starting from, where you're going, but more importantly, what are the steps you're going to take to get to that end goal, whether that be in a year's time, 3 months' time, or 5 years' time. The process is exactly the same. So we put a template together for you, and if you do want to copy the template, drop in the comment section template, and we'll send it across to you. It's very quick and easy to use, and you'll see as we jump in. So I'm going to open up that spreadsheet right now so we can dive straight into it. And I have made you the promise that this business plan will take less than 10 minutes to do. And there's a very specific reason, is because you should already have some of this information on hand. But it's not a complicated process, as you'll see. It's just about entering some information, and your plan is essentially done. And we'll see what that looks like right now. So as I said, opening up my Excel spreadsheet here, and you'll see it's the business plan itself. I've given you a sample here. We're going to dive into the numbers. But the business plan, essentially, it's just a one-pager, right? It doesn't need to be an entire booklet of information. It doesn't need to be 500 pages. 500 more is not better when it comes to plans. Sometimes the simplest plans executed well are actually the best laid plans. So looking at our sample here, and I'll just blow this up on the screen for you. It's a little bit small. If I can increase the size there. I'll blow that up for those of you watching on a phone particularly. But you'll see the top part of the plan here is really the financials, right? So any business plan, it's important for us to understand why have we got a business, and the businesses are there to make money. It's a distinction between a business and a hobby. When we approach businesses, it's to understand, well, what is the business there to deliver? And there's always a financial aspect to that. You may not be motivated by money, but the business allows you to have a certain lifestyle, for example. So the business needs to perform in a certain way so that you don't have to spend time in that business or spend time worrying about how much you're going to make, or how much you're going to take home, or how much, affording that new holiday, or buying a house, or a new car, or your kid's education, or whatever. So whatever that motivator is, finances always are the entry point for that. So that's why when we approach businesses, we're always looking at the numbers. And at Kitchen Collective Coaching, we go straight to the numbers, because numbers allow us to understand how the business is actually going. So as I say, the first part of the plan is the numbers, and then the second part is the action plan. So once we know the numbers about where we're starting from and then where we're going to go, the action plan is going to tell us how we're going to get there. So we're going to look at both of those parts now. So I've given you an example. Now this is a theoretical business. I'm actually going to walk you through the numbers of an actual business that we work with now and how we put a plan together for them. But this is a theoretical business. And what you'll see in the finance section of this is we've got the current being, where is the business currently at? We're looking at this over a period of a year, and our goal being, where do we want it to get to? In a year's time, where do we want to see this business? And so looking at the numbers down in the current business, this business is doing $700,000 a year. It's got a labor cost of $280,000. That's what we spent at 40%, right? So it's not exactly ideal, certainly not where we would want to see it. It's got cost of goods at $230,000, being 33%. For some of you, it may not be terrible, but again, not the best result that we've seen. Rental of $90,000 or 13%, depending on your type of business. Depends, as most of you know, rents can vary greatly. Some people are paying $50,000 a year or less. Other people are paying $200,000 a year or more. I once had a business that was paying close to $1 million a year in rent. Made it very challenging to operate that business and make the numbers work. We're looking at overheads of this business, $110,000 a year, and on these sales, this revenue, it's pretty high at 16%. And as you see, we're projecting a loss of losing $10,000 a year, which is not fantastic. No one ever wants to lose money. Another couple of piece of information we really need, and you'll see why in a minute, is we're looking at the average check. In this business, it's $13.50. So we're talking about kind of an average cafe, maybe sit down, does some sort of sit down plated meals, more expensive, to get an average check of $13.50. And on average, we're serving 997 customers a week, just under 1,000 customers. And so looking at where we would want this business to go, now there's kind of no hard and fast methodology for this, but we're always looking for improvement, and you'll see why we've included some of the information in this business plan, because it tells us how realistic some of these targets are going to be. So I'm saying that we want this business to go from $700,000 a year to $800,000. So it's about a $2,000 a week increase in the revenue. Or if you see over the right-hand side, we're talking about 14% increase. So it's not crazy numbers when we're talking about an improvement on the business, but it's still going to be ambitious. In terms of our labor cost, I'm saying that we want to get it from 40% down to 35%. Again, not an impossible task. You actually see the numbers here. The wage figure is actually going to stay exactly the same for the year, $280,000. What we're doing is we're going to serve more customers or do more business with the same number of staffing, the same labor cost that we've got. We're talking about reducing our cost of goods from 33% down to 30%. Again, not an impossible task, a 3 percentage point drop. Our rent staying the same. Now, some of you will actually have, or most of you will actually have rent increasing every year. So you'll have a 5% increase or 4% increase, depending on what's in your lease. Just for the purposes of this exercise, we're saying the rent staying the same. And I'm talking about a reduction in overheads of $20,000, and you'll see why in a minute. And the net effect of all of this is by increasing our sales and reducing some of those costs, or in effect keeping them the same, like our labor costs, we're going to go from losing $10,000 a year to making $100,000 a year, which is not too bad on a business like this. Not the most amount of money. Some of you would have earned more than $100,000 before you had a business, but it's not a terrible result. Certainly the business that's doing about $800,000 a year in revenue. But more importantly here, we're going to increase our average check by $14.50 to $14.50, I should say. So we're increasing it by $1 on the average check, which means we're going from just under 1,000 customers a week to 1,061, or an additional 64 customers a week. So how are we going to do that? And this is what I say when we've come to the financial part of our plan, where we then need to work out how we're actually going to go and do that. What plans are we putting in place? And this is what's really quite critical, is breaking the plan down. So on this one here, you see the plan's actually broken up into the 4 sections, being labor, cost of goods, sales, and overheads. So we've got specific things that we're going to do in each area. And in the labor, I've just called out that we're going to reduce that by 5%. How are we going to do that? We're going to cross-train front of house and back of house staff. And the ability to cross-train means that we don't have to have certain shifts necessarily just for kitchen or just for the front of house, so we can utilize people more flexibly during the day. And we're going to the new roster with some shorter shifts. So we're not just putting people on for 8-hour shifts or whatever to give them more hours. We're actually going to look at cutting down some time in the morning and time in the afternoon for this business that's appropriate. And that's how we're going to maintain our labor cost. For the cost of goods, we're looking at, we're doing complete menu breakdown, menu costing for all menu items. Not everyone does that. Those of you who are guilty of that, you need to get onto it straight away. But we're going to complete menu costing so we know the cost of all of our items. We're also going to set a weekly prep schedule. So that tells us what we're going to make on certain days so that we're not over prepping, we're not buying things in that we shouldn't need. And then the last part here, we're going to set a weekly purchasing budget, and that's going to give us some control over our purchases to make sure we know what we're spending through the week, that we're not spending more than that. In this case, 30% that we've allocated for cost of goods. So we're going to keep track of that every week. From a sales point of view, and again, the sales comes in is that we're just looking for an increase in the average check. It's not about doing lots of big promotions and hoping for that long advertising campaigns and marketing campaigns are going to drive lots of people in. You'll notice here that we're tackling the sales increase by doing 2 things. Is we're going to increase the average check, and then we're going to get a few more customers in. So if we look at 64 people over a course of a week, it's only less than 10 people a day. It's about 9 people every day that we need to get. So if we're open 8 hours a day, we only need an extra 1 person an hour there or thereabouts to actually get us that result that we want, an extra $100,000, $110,000 in revenue. So it is actually that simple when we break down the numbers. And so to get that average check increase, we're going to add some premium items on the menu that you'll see right here. So it's about bumping up the basket. We're going to introduce a new lunch range and a new burger, and that's going to help us to appeal to a new customer. So that's where we're going to get our extra 64 customers a week, or we're aiming to. And we're also going to look at increasing our sandwich pricing in this menu, which again helps us with the increasing the average check there. So some simple things, but very actionable. They're very specific things that we're going to do, which is going to help us achieve those the targets of the increase in average check and increasing average weekly customers. From our overheads, and you'll note that we said we're going to reduce our overheads by $20,000 on this venue. We're going to review all our overhead costs, everything that goes in that overhead basket, be it insurance and waste and telephones and subscriptions and all of your other miscellaneous costs that go into the business. We're going to review all of those, understand where we're spending our money. And an easy one is often to renegotiate a waste. And also insurance, and they can see some of the bigger costs when it comes to overhead. So that's two things we're going to look at first off to reduce that. But as I say, we're going to review all our overheads and see if we can remove some of those. Subscriptions is one of those that you may find that by the time you stack it all up, you've got subscriptions for internet and telephones and software packages and accounting packages, and you're paying a bookkeeper and you're paying an accountant, and there's often double up or services that you thought were useful, but you're not actually fully utilizing. So if you could get rid of those, you're going to save some money, often multiples of thousands of dollars a year. So that's pretty simple. That's the process that we go through. But before we finish this video, I'm actually going to show you very quickly how we would do this for a new venue or for an existing venue. So I've actually got the numbers from a venue that we work with. So I'm going to use them as our starting point and what it might look like to build a plan for them. And it's only going to take us a few minutes now to actually put this together. So on this venue, we're talking about sales of $750,000 a year. That's what we're starting with. I'll put that number right in there. We've got a labor cost currently of $250,000. So it's not too bad at 33%. We've got cost of goods at $220,000. And I am using round numbers. You probably aren't going to have round numbers when you do this for yourself. We've got $85,000 a year in rent, and making sure that when you're putting your rental figure in that you've got gross rent. So if you're paying for rubbish removal through the landlord, if you're in a shopping center, you're paying for marketing levies or anything else like that, you want to make sure that your rent is a gross figure. And your overheads, in this business, we've got overheads of $80,000. So it's not a bad business in the sense that we're making $115,000 a year. Essentially, the owner of that business is reasonably happy. But I always want more, particularly when we're talking about businesses. How do we push it forward? Don't just sit back on your laurels, because trust me, all of these costs over the next year are going to increase, certainly on things like subscriptions and, as I say, on rent, and you might have wage increases and things like that, and food cost increases that if we're not pushing the business forward, eventually those increases come back and bite us. And this business as well, we've got an average check of $12.50. So it's not the best for a business of this size, but it's not terrible either. We've certainly seen businesses where they're even under $10, which makes it really quite challenging. So for this business, again, I'm going to use the figure of $100,000. I want them to get to $850 in the next 12 months. And obviously it's been some challenging times with COVID and lockdown and all that kind of stuff that we've been talking about for the last few weeks. But I'm still going to aim for that figure right there of $850. The difference when we do the goals, particularly when using this template here, is that we actually put percentages in for our target rather than the dollar amount. So I'm going to say that we want to get to 30% labor cost on this business. So this business is a pretty good one. It's got a low labor cost model. It's a takeaway business. They're not doing sit-down service or service at the table, so they can save a little bit of money on their labor. Again, your model might be quite different. And in another video, we're talking about how to work out your labor model. Now, the cost of goods at 29% is, again, not terrible, but I still want to see some improvement if we can. So we're going to aim for 27, assuming that our rental, I'm not going to do the calculation, but our rental is the same. And our overheads, I want to get down by $5,000 a year, because, again, we're always looking for some improvement there. And the benefit of this is, by doing that, we're going to get to $205,000 a year profit, which is huge on a business that's doing $850,000 a year. One caveat: these guys don't do a lot of takeaway in terms of the third-party delivery platforms like Uber and Menulog, which is why they make the kind of money or potential to make the kind of profit they do. Certainly, if you've got a business that's relying a lot on the third-party delivery apps, these numbers are going to look a lot different. But again, on the right-hand side, you're going to see the kind of improvements we're talking about. So a 13% improvement in the actual revenue, not ridiculous. We're talking about 3 percentage points on the labor, 2 percentage points on the cost of goods. Now, the rent, obviously the percentage is going to come down only because our revenue is going up, but there's not a lot of change there. $5,000 an hour is coming back from our overheads, and it's an improvement in $90,000 a year if we make all those changes. And to do that, we're going to increase the average check to $13.50. Again, $1 increase over a year is pretty safe when we talk about an action plan. But you'll see here that we only need to get 57 customers a week extra into our venue to achieve this target. And the reason I use these kind of metrics is when you're looking for lots of new customers to come in, there's a real risk of not achieving your goals. Is that you need a lot of new behavior. And particularly in a market, the best thing that you could possibly do when you're looking at your business is saying, how do I get more from what I've already got? So if I've already got customers coming in, how do I sell more to them? If they're already coming in and just buying a coffee, how do I get them to buy a lunch item every 5th visit that they come in if they're not already doing that? And it's a lot easier to tackle what's already coming through the door than trying to create new behavior. It actually costs a lot more money to attract a new customer than it does to maintain an existing one or sell more to an existing one. So my preference is always to look at how do we get more from what we've got. And certainly when we're talking about increasing an average check from $12.50 to $13.50, it's not a huge jump. Now, if we wanted to get that to $15, that's going to be a little bit trickier. We've got to look at new ranges of products, and we'll talk about that when we get to the menus videos further in this series. But again, looking at the average weekly customers of 1,211. So back to the action plan, which is, as I said to you before, the most important thing that we do right here is actually just talking about what we're going to do, how we're actually going to make those improvements. And some of these you'll see are probably duplicates because they're almost my go-to areas of improvement in a business. So with the labor costs, first thing we're going to do is I'm going to call out that we're going to reduce labor by 3 percentage points there. Now, one thing that we want to do is be very specific. When we talk about the action plan, don't use wishy-washy things like just improve labor or improve efficiency. We need to have some tangible things that we're doing. So we're going to look at hiring more junior staff at a lower rate of pay. Certainly for those off hours, the afternoons, if we're operating the weekends where our normal labor cost is obviously higher, certainly if you're paying penalty rates. And the other thing is we're going to look at cross-training, front of house and back of house staff. And then some of my go-to things about how do we just get some more efficiency. Again, we're not talking about, we're actually talking about increasing the labor slightly in terms of the dollars that we spend, but not by much, which is why, compared to our revenue, which is why our percentage is actually coming down. So we don't need to make a lot of changes here. It's actually about holding the line and serving more customers, doing more with the same amount of labor that we're already spending. Our cost of goods is coming down, so we're going to reduce our COGS by 2%. You'll be asking yourself, why are you putting this here when you've already got it listed in the finance section? But I find this once we've done the finance section, that tells us the details. The action plan is really then what we're going to use from here. We're not so concerned about the numbers after this point. So I'm really going to go straight into what's the action plan. That's what I'm going to talk about every week with the team. So to reduce that cost of goods, menu costing on all items. And I'm going to look at introducing new salad bowl range. That's how I'm going to get some new customers every week. So as I said here, with 57 customers, I need about 8 people a day. I'm going to hope that 8 people a day come in for my new salad bowl range that I've developed for this business here. From a sales point of view, so we're increasing average check by $1. The other thing we're going to do, and I've actually called it out here, is new salad range. And there may be some duplication here. It's not about doing lots of new things all the time. The other thing is I'm going to do a price competitor review. And the reason we do a price competitor review is to see if our competitors are charging more for the same kind of products that we're selling. Is we want to increase up to that point. Up to what our competitors are doing. Now, if we're at the same price as our competitors, I've talked about this before, is you might want to increase your average check to, those menu item prices to up to 10% more than your competitors are actually charging. So that's what we call a competitive price range. Anything over that 10% above your competitors, you've got to have a significantly different or better product. And not just in your opinion, in the opinion of your customers. But they're the few things that we're going to do, which is going to get me that extra $1 in average check. The other thing I will say is we're going to do price increase on beverages, because I know in this business our beverages are actually a little bit cheap. a little bit too cheap anyway. On our overheads again, review of all overhead costs. We're going to review waste contracts and review insurance providers. In this market, those are two very easy things to do. I know in this particular business, they haven't done that before. So going out to the market and actually getting competitive quotes, they are going to save some money on that, but doing that full overheads review, I don't need to put down all the individual overhead costs because we're going to capture that in the full overhead review. So the one thing you'll notice, it's as simple as that. It's probably taken me maybe about 8 minutes to do that. Also, while I've been talking a lot, but it's a very, very, very simple process to do. There doesn't need to be a lot, take you a lot of time, because I also understand this business. I know the business. What you'll also notice from the action plan, this is really quite key, is the action plan only has a few items for each category. We don't need 30 things to do for every category. With this list here, even if we talk about the actionable items, we've got 9 things that we're going to do. Probably only take us a couple of months to implement all of those, but 9 things we're going to do to get us to where we want to get to. If it's taking us 15 or 20 or 30 different initiatives to get our $100,000, we're not focusing on the right things. Some of those, be it the new product range, if we can't get 5 customers or 8 customers a day from a new product range, then we've got a problem. That product range is not working for us, and we may need to go and swap that out and put something else in there. The thing with this action plan is we don't need to put everything on there either. These are the things that we're going to start with and see if they work. And then once we've run out of that, we're going to come back and we'll probably do another business plan and spend that 10 minutes to really focus on, well, we got to a particular point in our business. Maybe we achieved the goals, maybe we didn't, but what's the next plan that we're going to put in place? So this doesn't have to be a thing that takes you hours and hours and hours and you only do once a year, once every 5 years. You can do this on a regular basis. I'd highly encourage you to be doing it every 6 months. If it only takes you 10 minutes, there's no reason why you can't. But as I say, the focus is really around now that the action plan and implementing those things and seeing what effect they actually have. I'm confident, because we've done this so many times before, that these are the kind of actions that will get us the improvement that we're talking about up here in our financial plan. So that is the 10-minute business plan. As I said to you, it shouldn't take you any longer than that. If you're spending hours on your business plan, you need to stop and reassess what you're doing. Come back to this, watch this video again and see how quickly I did it. The most important thing is you understand your numbers and you understand where those numbers are, what's driving those numbers. If you've got any questions about how to fill out this business plan, you've got any questions about what should you be aiming for, what's realistic percentages? I know the question around what should my labor percentage and what should my cost of goods percentage be? Hit me up, drop a comment in the comment section below this video, send me a DM or reach out to Mandar as well, my partner in crime, and we'll be happy to talk that through with you. Yeah, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But that's it for this video. If you have found it useful, let us know. Please share. If you're not already in our group, jump online and find it. We drop lots of useful content in the group on a weekly or daily basis. But we're here to help you as well. So if you've got any questions, particularly now during pandemic and lockdowns and all the craziness that's going on, reach out to us. We can help kind of put a plan together to get you out of whatever challenges you're in, or just talk about what you might be thinking about as your next step. The next thing that we're all going to be talking about is what's happening coming out of lockdown, particularly if you're in it, and coming into Christmas, and maybe how do you recoup some of the ground that you've lost or reset your business for the future now that things have changed. So until then, again, I hope you have found this very information useful. Jump online and find us. Otherwise, stay safe, and I'll see you in another video.